For more than 3 decades, Nadia Khan had lived in the quiet comfort of her marriage. At 55, she had grown into a woman whose life revolved around the rhythm of her husband's needs, the upkeep of their modest but respectable home, and the dignity of being known in their community as Imran Sahib's wife. Friends often admired their bond, calling them an example of loyalty and tradition in a time when marriages seemed so fragile. And for many years, Nadia believed it too. But lately, something had shifted. It began with little things. His phone, once left carelessly on the dining table, was now tucked firmly into his pocket. The sound of notifications muted. The late evenings, explained with vague words like business, meetings, or friends, stretched longer and longer. Nadia noticed the silences between them becoming heavier, filled not with comfort, but with an emptiness that gnawed at her. One evening, as she set dinner on the table, she glanced at the empty chair across from her. Imran was late again. The steam rising from the lentil soup curled in the air before fading away into nothingness, just like the laughter that had once filled their home. Nadia sat down, her hand resting on the edge of the table, staring at the untouched plates. Her mind reached back to their early years together. She remembered how he used to wait for her outside her college in the old Corolla, smiling with flowers clutched in his hand. She remembered his promises, his vows whispered during sleepless nights when they were young, broke, and madly in love. "We'll grow old together, Nadia," he had said once, brushing his fingers through her hair. "You and me, no one else." The memory made her chest ache. Now, those words felt like relics from another lifetime. When Imran finally walked in that night, the smell of expensive cologne clung to him, one she hadn't seen in the cupboard. Nadia looked at him carefully. The crisp shirt, the carefully styled hair. He seemed different. Younger, almost. Her heart stirred with suspicion, though her lips forced a smile. "You're late again," she said quietly, not accusatory, but not casually either. "Work," he replied, dropping his keys onto the console without looking at her. His tone was clipped, impatient. She wanted to ask more, wanted to demand where he really was, why his eyes no longer lingered on her the way they used to. But fear gripped her, fear of hearing the truth she wasn't ready for. So instead, she sat across from him, watching him eat silently, every clink of the spoon against the bowl echoing like a hammer inside her chest. That night, Nadia lay awake while Imran slept beside her. The distance between them in bed felt like a canyon. She studied his face in the dim light, a face she knew better than her own. The man who once confided every secret now carried something inside him she couldn't touch. Her mind raced with questions she dared not voice. Was it another woman? Was he simply tired of her after 30 years? Or was it something else, something darker? She didn't know. What she did know was that the foundation of their marriage, once solid as stone, was beginning to crack. And no matter how hard she tried to deny it, she felt the ground shifting beneath her. The cracks were still small, hidden to the outside world. But deep in her bones, Nadia sensed they would widen, pulling everything she had built with him into a darkness she couldn't yet imagine. She closed her eyes, praying it was just her mind exaggerating, just insecurities that came with age. But somewhere in the pit of her stomach, a cold truth whispered back. This was only the beginning. The nights of unease grew into weeks of torment. Nadia told herself she was imagining things, that Imran's late hours and clipped answers were nothing more than the weight of work. But whispers have a way of finding ears that are already desperate for confirmation. It was at a family wedding when the first rumor reached her. 2 women, seated behind her, spoke in hushed voices while adjusting their bangles. "They say he's been seen with a much younger woman," one whispered. "Pretty thing, ambitious. Not from here." Nadia froze, her hand tightening around the cup of tea she held. She didn't turn, didn't ask who they were speaking about, but in her heart, she already knew. That night, she could not sleep. The ceiling above her became a canvas for every insecurity, every fear she had buried deep inside. She thought of her gray strands, her hands marked by years of work, the lines that had crept onto her face. And against that image appeared another, a faceless, younger rival, brimming with all the youth and vitality Nadia felt slipping away. The whispers became more specific, in the days that followed. Friends avoided her eyes. Neighbors spoke too carefully in front of her. And then the name emerged. Aliyah, 28 years old. A woman whose beauty was as fresh as her ambition, who carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew she could turn heads without trying. Aliyah was everything Nadia feared she was losing with age. Her youth, her appeal, her place in the heart of the man she had given her life to. Nadia's suspicion turned to obsession. She began watching Imran more closely, the way his phone lit up with messages late at night, the hurried way he slipped out for errands, the cologne that never seemed to fade from his shirt collar. Every detail became a clue, every clue a wound. One evening, when Imran claimed he had a business dinner, Nadia followed. Her heart pounded as she trailed behind the taxi he had taken, her dupatta clutched tightly in her hands. She felt foolish, like a child playing detective, but the need for truth overpowered her shame. The taxi stopped outside a restaurant on the edge of the city. Nadia parked at a distance, her eyes straining. Through the glass, she saw him, Imran, smiling, his face lit in a way it hadn't been in years. And across from him sat her, Aliyah. She was more beautiful than Nadia had imagined, dressed elegantly. Her laughter carried even through the glass, her presence radiant. The sight was like a knife sliding slowly into Nadia's chest. For a moment she could not breathe. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. When Imran reached across the table to touch Aliyah's hand, Nadia's world shattered. The man who once swore he would never need anyone but her was now sharing that intimacy with another. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Nadia drove home that night in silence, the city lights blurring through her tears. She sat in the dark living room until dawn, the image of Aliyah's laughter etched into her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again, her husband's smile, his hand reaching for someone else. From that night, Nadia's life became a cycle of watching, listening, waiting. She followed Imran's patterns, memorized the times he disappeared, and learned to recognize the perfume that clung faintly to his clothes. Her love had twisted into something darker, an obsession to uncover every trace of betrayal, even when the truth was already clear. And yet, deep inside, Nadia wasn't only furious at Imran. She was furious at Aliyah for existing, for being young, for stepping into a role that had belonged to her for 30 years. Each thought of the younger woman burned like acid, corroding what little peace she had left. By the time Imran finally confessed, Nadia was already drowning in the shadows of suspicion. She wasn't shocked, only shattered by the cruelty of confirmation. The night Nadia had seen Imran and Aliyah together never left her mind. It replayed endlessly, each smile, each stolen glance between them searing itself deeper into her memory. For weeks, she waited for him to come clean, to confess what she already knew. But when the truth finally arrived, it was not whispered in guilt. It was declared with cruel certainty. Imran came home late one evening, his face a mask of calm, as though the decision he carried was no heavier than bringing home groceries. Nadia stood in the living room, arms folded, her eyes burning with sleeplessness. She had rehearsed 1,000 accusations in her head. But when he finally spoke, the ground beneath her shifted in ways she hadn't prepared for. "I married her," he said simply, as if he were telling her about a business deal. "It is lawful. You know that." The word struck Nadia like a physical blow. Married. Not an affair, not a fleeting sin to be hidden away. A marriage. A second wife, young enough to be her daughter. Her lips trembled. Married. The word cracked as it left her mouth. "After 30 years with me, you marry her?" Imran did not flinch. He poured himself a glass of water, avoiding her eyes. "I have given you a life, haven't I? Respect, a home, everything you needed. This doesn't change that." Nadia's voice rose, quivering with rage. "Everything I needed? I gave you my youth, Imran, my dreams, my years. I bore your burdens when we had nothing, and now you replace me like I am old furniture." His face hardened. "Don't dramatize." This is allowed. "She is young, yes, but she understands me. You become bitter, Nadia. Always questioning, always doubting. I need peace." The cruelty in those words sliced deeper than the confession itself. Nadia staggered back, gripping the edge of a chair for balance. She looked at him. This man she had built her entire identity around, and saw not a husband, but a stranger cloaked in arrogance. In her heart, the image of Aliyah twisted into something monstrous. No longer a young woman led astray, but a thief who had stolen everything Nadia had spent decades building. Her laughter at the restaurant, her hand reaching for Imran's. Those moments no longer seemed like innocence. They were weapons deliberate and sharp. Nadia's chest ached with humiliation. What would people say when they learned? That she was not enough? That after 30 years of loyalty, she had been pushed aside for someone younger? She imagined their whispers, their pitying glances, their cruel comparisons between her aging face and Aliyah's fresh beauty. Imran finished his water, placing the glass down with finality. This doesn't mean I don't respect you. You are still my wife, but she is also my wife now. Accept it, Nadia. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Accept it, as if betrayal could be swallowed like medicine. As if 30 years of sacrifice could be erased without consequence. That night, Nadia sat alone in the dark after he went to bed. The house felt unfamiliar, the walls pressing in on her like strangers listening to her silence. Her heart pounded with a storm she could not contain. She was not just hurt, she was discarded, reduced to the shadow of a woman, while another now basked in the warmth that once belonged to her. And as she stared into the darkness, one thought rooted itself in her mind, poisonous and unshakable. If Aliyah had stolen her life, there would be no peace until she took it back. The announcement of Imran's second marriage did not explode into public scandal immediately. Outwardly, life continued its quiet rituals. Tea brewing in the morning, the hum of the ceiling fan in the afternoon, dinner set out in the evenings. But within the walls of the Khan household, silence became a weapon sharper than any blade. Nadia carried herself with a rigid dignity, her back straighter than usual, her words clipped and calculated. She refused to beg, refused to weep in front of them. If Imran thought she would crumble, she would deny him that satisfaction. Yet beneath her stillness, rage smoldered, unspoken and poisonous. Aliyah entered the home not timidly, but with the assuredness of a woman who believed she had earned her place. She decorated her room with soft pastels and perfumes, placed her cosmetics openly on the dressing table, and walked the corridors as though she had always belonged. When relatives visited, Aliyah made sure her laughter was heard, bright and careless, as if to announce, I am here now. I am the wife he chose. For Nadia, each sound of that laughter was a needle in her flesh. She avoided Aliyah at first, retreating into corners, burying herself in chores. But avoidance soon gave way to passive resistance. Nadia would leave the dishes undone when she knew Aliyah was expecting to host. She would forget to prepare meals Imran requested, forcing the younger woman to stumble awkwardly through the kitchen. At times, their exchanges were polite to the point of cruelty. Did you enjoy the soup? Nadia asked one evening, her tone flat. Yes, Ali replied, smiling, though Imran prefers it spicier. I'll make it for him next time. The words struck like daggers cloaked in sweetness. Nadia returned the smile, though her eyes were cold. Of course, youth always brings new flavors to the table. The battles were fought not with raised voices, but with carefully placed barbs and suffocating silences. Imran, too self-absorbed to intervene, floated between them, sometimes offering Aliyah a reassuring glance, sometimes demanding Nadia behave with respect. Each time he sided with the younger wife, another piece of Nadia's pride crumbled. At night, Nadia lay awake, the walls of her room pressing in on her. She thought of the years she had given him. Her 20s spent raising his children, her 30s managing the household, her 40s standing beside him as he built his career. And now, in her 50s, she was expected to fade quietly into the background, while another woman stole the stage. Aliyah, for her part, was not blind to the hostility. She tried, in her own way, to claim dominance, not always with malice, but with the impulsive cruelty of youth. She would sit beside Imran at the dining table, taking the seat that had always been Nadia's. She would answer phone when relatives called, her voice warm and cheerful, making Nadia feel like a guest in her own life. The air between them grew heavier each day. Even the servants tiptoed through the halls, sensing the unspoken war. The clatter of utensils, the shuffle of footsteps, the creak of doors. Everything seemed amplified, tense, ready to fracture. One evening, Nadia entered the kitchen to find Aliyah preparing tea for Imran. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the masks fell away. Aliyah's gaze was not innocent. It was defiant. Nadia's not submissive. It was blazing. Neither spoke. But in that silence, a truth crystallized. There was no room for both of them. Later that night, Imran confronted Nadia. His voice was stern, impatient. Enough of this coldness. You will respect her as my wife. Nadia stared at him, her lips trembling, but she said nothing. Respect? After all she had endured, after being replaced like a broken ornament? She turned her face away, unwilling to let him see the storm rising inside her. As Imran left the room, Nadia whispered to herself, her voice barely audible but heavy with promise. This war won't stay silent forever. The silence in the house had stretched so long it felt like another presence, one that followed Nadia into every room, sat beside her at every meal, and lay between her and Imran in bed. But on this night, the silence finally broke. The clock ticked past midnight. The house was asleep, but Nadia sat awake, her chest tight with words she could no longer swallow. Imran entered the bedroom, loosening his tie, smelling faintly a cologne that wasn't bought for her. He glanced at her, then looked away, as though she were a piece of furniture he had grown tired of. Imran, Nadia said, her voice steady though her hands trembled. He paused, sighing. What now, Nadia? She rose from bed, her eyes glistening. 30 years. 30 years of my life I gave you. I carried you through your failures, stood by you when no one else did. And now you sit there, acting as though I'm nothing. Do you even remember who I am to you? His expression hardened, jaw tightening. You don't understand. You've changed. You become bitter. Every word you speak is laced with anger. I come home to peace with Aliyah, but with you, there's only poison. Nadia flinched as if struck. Poison? After everything I've done for you, that's what I become. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on, desperate. You once said we'd grow old together, that I was your only one. Do those words mean nothing to you now? Imran shook his head, dismissive. That was a long time ago. People change. Needs change. I am not doing anything unlawful. Stop acting as though I committed a crime. She stepped closer, her hands clenched at her sides. Lawful? Is that what you hide behind? You think marriage is a legal shield for betrayal? You think because it is permitted, it doesn't break me? Imran, I am flesh and blood, not a contract you can replace. His tone grew sharper, colder. You're obsessed, Nadia. Obsessed with this idea that you've been wronged. Why can't you just accept reality? Why can't you be grateful for what you still have? Her eyes widened, filling with tears. Grateful? For humiliation? For watching another woman sit in my place? For watching you give her the smile that once belonged to me? Tell me, Imran, should I bow to her too, like a servant? For a moment his face flickered with guilt, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by irritation. Enough. You're making this unbearable. I won't argue with you every night. If you can't live with this, that's your choice. But I won't let you ruin the peace I have now. Nadia's body trembled. She wanted to scream, to shake him until he remembered the weight of their shared years, the children they raised, the nights they survived together when they had nothing. Instead, her voice dropped to a whisper, aching with grief. I wasn't asking for peace, Imran. I was asking for love, for respect, for the man I once knew. But he did not answer. He lay down on the bed, turning his back to her, pulling the blanket over himself with the indifference of a man who had already left in spirit. Nadia stood there, staring at his shadowed form. Her tears fell silently, dripping onto the floor. The man she had fought for, sacrificed for, built her identity around. He was gone, even while he lay breathing beside her. As the room sank back into silence, Nadia's heart hollowed out. It was not anger that consumed her now, but despair, deep, suffocating, and unrelenting. And in that despair, something darker began to stir. The air in the house grew thicker back on every passing Nadia lay awake until dawn, as the walls themselves staring at the ceiling of unspoken words. Might hold the answers to Nadia could no longer bear the silence. His words echoed every in her glance from Aliyah felt like obsessed, poison. Every smile like a dagger carved into her like a knife. That evening, reminding her that the man she had built her Imran had left for a business meeting, as nothing more leaving the two women alone. When the morning came, the house was a house like a ghost. No boiled tea, no laid out breakfast, just a low hum of the ceiling fan stirring Aliyah's laughter floated faintly. Nadia found Aliyah in the lounge, a cruel reminder casually on the sofa. To Imran, a glossy magazine, was a sound of youth always belonged there. To Nadia's heart, it was a trumpet of her defeat. She had rehearsed this moment countless times back through the years, but now she remembered how she had once wanted to study further. You must be very proud. Maybe even teach at the university began, but Imran had needed her sharp. She remembered how she had longed for a bigger family, unreadable. But after two children and Imran's insistence of stealing another woman's life, more. Nadia silenced that dream too, stepping closer. She remembered the dresses she stopped buying, living in a home she buried, drinking the tea, friendships she abandoned. Aliyah shut the magazine and placed the dutiful partner who gave him tone was calm, and now her eyes glimmered with after decades of sacrifice. I stole nothing. She was discarded for a woman who had given him nothing but he wanted me. A smile. That is not her resentment theft, began to grow claws. Love. At first, Nadia let out a bitter laugh. For you think what you have is coldness, his selfishness. You are blinded by youth, but soon it shifted by the thrill of being curling tightly around Aliyah. But wait, to Nadia, time will carve lines. Aliyah was no longer just a young woman, and then he will look for someone newer. Someone the thief who had stolen just Nadia's abandoned me, her dignity, for the first time, her very identity. Aliyah's composure. Every time Nadia passed by Aliyah's room, maybe he left because you suffocated. It felt like an invasion. Maybe he was tired of life marking the past. Every hairpin left obligations. Every giggle overheard was a declaration. I am Nadia's hands trembled. You are the past. But she refused. The storm inside Nadia intensified. I gave him everything. She could no longer focus my dreams, my body, my soul. Even the mirror became her marriage. She stared at her reflection. She pointed a shaking tracing the lines on her face. You think you could just walk in and strands woven through her hair? Aliyah rose to her feet now. She standing eye to eye with her. This is why perfume lingered in the air. This is why he doesn't look at you anymore. And unbearable. The mirror gave no comfort, Nadia. Only confirmation of her deepest fear. That's the difference. That she had become invisible. He doesn't need your sacrifices anymore. And Nadia's emotions began to swing violently. The words struck like a slap and rage. Nadia's sometimes she would weep silently into her pillow. But her fury burned hotter clutching at memories of the man you will never replace me. Other times, you will never understand what it means. She would clench her lifetime to a man imagining Aliyah's laughter doesn't deserve it. Her beauty nothing but a shadow. Her place beside temporary, destroyed, fleeting. It was during one of those dark nights that a thought entered Nadia's back to me. Because deep down he knows louder, more insistent. If Aliyah had never curved into a smirk, none of this would happen. And victorious. If she were gone, you sound desperate. Things could return to what they were. That's why he doesn't look at you anymore. You become a reminder of everything he wants to forget. Begging herself to forget it. Silence like poison between them. Seeped back in, heavier than screams. Growing stronger each time women breathed shadow crossed her path. Their eyes locked. The breaking point came when Imran returned her lives one evening with Aliyah on his arm. Finally, her smile radiant, as though she were flaunting her voice trembling but laced with venom. Imran didn't notice the way Nadia's hands trembled as she served tea. And enemies do not live under the same roof forever. Aliyah addressed her with false sweetness. Aliyah's smirk faltered, but Nadia noticed everything. Unease crossed every gesture, but before she could respond, every sound in Imran's car was a hammer pounding against the fragile walls of her sanity. The confrontation dissolved into silence. Long after the house had gone both women retreating. Nadia sat alone in the kitchen, but the poison of their words in her hand rattled against the saucer as her mind replayed decades of sacrifice, betrayal, and both knew something irreversible. Something inside her cracked. Violence no longer felt impossible, but irreversible. It felt inevitable. She no longer saw herself as a victim waiting for pity. She saw herself as a woman stripped of everything, left with nothing but rage. And rage, she realized, could be a weapon. The air in the house grew thicker with every passing day, as if the walls themselves absorbed the venom of unspoken words. Nadia could no longer bear the silence. Every glance from Aliyah felt like mockery, every smile like a dagger pressed to her throat. That evening, the chance arrived. Imran had left for a business meeting, leaving the two women alone under the same roof. The house was unusually still. No footsteps, no murmurs, just a low hum of the ceiling fan stirring the suffocating air. Nadia found Aliyah in the lounge, sprawled casually on the sofa, flipping through a glossy magazine as if she had always belonged there. Nadia's heart pounded in her chest. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, but now the words felt jagged, raw. "You must be very proud," Nadia began, her voice quiet but sharp. Aliyah looked up, her expression unreadable. "Proud of what?" "Of stealing another woman's life," Nadia spat, stepping closer. "Of sitting where I sat, living in a home I built, drinking the tea from cups I chose." Aliyah shut the magazine and placed it aside. Her tone was calm, but her eyes glimmered with challenge. "I stole nothing. Imran made his choice. He wanted me. That is not theft, that is love." "Love." Nadia let out a bitter laugh. "You think what you have is love? You are blinded by youth, by the thrill of being desired. But wait, time will carve lines into your face too, and then he will look for someone newer, someone fresher, just as he abandoned me." For the first time, Aliyah's composure cracked. Her voice sharpened. "Maybe he left because you suffocated him. Maybe he was tired of a wife who clung to the past, who drowned him in obligations. He wanted freedom. I gave him that." Nadia's hands trembled, but she refused to show weakness. "I gave him everything. My youth, my dreams, my body, my soul. I bled for this marriage. And you," she pointed a shaking finger at Aliyah, "you think you can just walk in and take what I built?" Aliyah rose to her feet now, standing eye to eye with her. Her perfume lingered in the air, sweet and unbearable. "You built a cage, Nadia. I opened the door. That's the difference between us. He doesn't need your sacrifices anymore. He needs me." The words struck like a slap. Nadia's vision blurred with tears, but her fury burned hotter than ever. "You will never replace me. You will never understand what it means to devote a lifetime to a man who doesn't deserve it. You are nothing but a shadow, temporary, fleeting. And when you're gone, he'll come crawling back to me, because deep down he knows who truly stood by him." Aliyah's lips curved into a smirk, cruel and victorious. "You sound desperate. That's what scares him. That's why he doesn't look at you anymore. You become a reminder of everything he wants to forget." Silence crackled between them, heavier than screams. Both women breathed hard, their eyes locked, as though the entire weight of their lives balanced in that moment. Finally, Nadia whispered, her voice trembling but laced with venom. "You've made me your enemy, Aliyah, and enemies do not live under the same roof forever." Aliyah's smirk faltered, a flicker of unease crossing her face. But before she could respond, the sound of Imran's car pulling into the driveway shattered the moment. The confrontation dissolved into silence, both women retreating into themselves. But the poison of their words lingered like smoke after fire. Neither spoke of it again that night. Yet both knew something irreversible had shifted. Violence no longer felt impossible. It felt inevitable. The rain began as a whisper, soft against the windows, then grew into a relentless storm that shook the walls of the house. Lightning fractured the night sky, flooding the rooms with violent bursts of white light, only to leave them drowning again in darkness. Nadia sat alone at the edge of her bed, her hands clenched so tightly her nails cut into her palms. The storm outside echoed the one inside her. A storm had been building for months, perhaps years, and tonight it could no longer be contained. Imran was away again. The house belonged to the two women, to their bitterness, to their unspoken war. Nadia rose slowly, her body heavy, yet her mind ablaze with thoughts she could no longer suppress. Each clap of thunder seemed to urge her forward. She found herself walking toward the kitchen. Perhaps she wanted water. Perhaps she wanted to silence the pounding in her chest. But when she stepped inside, she froze. Aliyah was already there. The younger woman stood by the counter, dressed in a silk nightgown that shimmered under the flicker of the storm's light. She was making tea, humming softly to herself, as if the world had never been cruel, as if hearts were not broken so easily. Nadia's jaw tightened. Aliyah noticed her then, her smile faint but edged with mockery. "Couldn't sleep?" "No," Nadia replied, her voice hollow. For a moment, silence. The rain lashed harder, as though the heavens were bearing witness. "You should try to rest," Aliyah said, her tone laced with superiority. "These late nights aren't good for your health." The words were gentle, but they landed like a dagger. Nadia felt the world tilt. The storm inside her surged. "Do not pretend to care for my health," she hissed. "You've poisoned my life enough already." Aliyah set her cup down, her movements slow, deliberate. "Still blaming me? Imran chose me, Nadia. You keep fighting a battle you already lost." "Lost?" Nadia stepped closer, her hands trembling. "I gave him everything. 30 years of my life. And you think you can erase me with your youth, your perfume, your pretty face? You are nothing compared to me." Aliyah's eyes flashed with defiance. "Then why is he with me and not you?" The words detonated in the air. Something snapped inside Nadia. She lunged, her hand striking out toward the cup. It shattered against the floor, fragments scattering like tiny blades. Steam rose from the spilled tea, ghostly and hot between them. "Don't touch me!" Aliyah screamed, pushing Nadia back. The sound pierced the storm, raw and full of fear. But Nadia's rage had taken control. Years of humiliation, loneliness, and betrayal poured out of her in a torrent. She grabbed the first thing her hand touched, a heavy glass vase on the counter. Her grip was unsteady, her vision blurred by tears and fury. Aliyah's eyes widened. "Nadia, stop!" But it was too late. With a cry that was half sob, half roar, Nadia swung. The vase struck Aliyah's head with a sickening crack. The younger woman collapsed to the floor, her body crumpling like a doll dropped from a child's hand. For a moment, the world froze. The rain, the thunder, the pounding of Nadia's heart, all seemed to stop. Only the silence remained, broken by the faint rattle of glass rolling across the tiles. Nadia staggered back, her chest heaving. She dropped the vase, and it shattered beside the body. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, smeared with blood where fragments had cut her skin. Aliyah's eyes were open, glassy, staring at nothing. A thin line of red traced down her temple, mingling with the rain that seeped into the open window. Nadia pressed her hands to her mouth, stifling a scream. She had dreamed of this moment in passing, but now that it had come, it felt unreal. Like a nightmare she could not wake from. She knelt beside the body, whispering through tears, "What have I done? Oh, God, what have I done?" The storm raged louder, as if answering her despair. Broken glass glistened on the floor like shards of a shattered life. The house was silent except for the rain and Nadia's ragged breathing. In the suffocating stillness, the weight of her act pressed down upon her. There was no undoing what had been done. The line had been crossed. The war ended, not with words, but with blood. And though the night hid her crime beneath its storm, dawn would come, and with it, consequences. The storm still roared outside, but inside the house there was only silence, thick, suffocating, unnatural. Nadia sat on the kitchen floor, her back pressed against the cabinet, her eyes fixed on the lifeless body sprawled across the tiles. Aliyah's hair fanned out like a dark halo. Her lips parted as though a final word had been stolen from her. Nadia's breath came in ragged gasps. Her hands shook violently, smeared with blood that wasn't entirely Aliyah's. She lifted them before her eyes, staring at the crimson streaks, and for a moment she felt both detached and consumed. The thought kept echoing in her head. "It's over. She's gone. It's over." But another voice whispered louder. "You killed her." The weight of the act pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Tears spilled freely now, mingling with the sweat and rain that clung to her skin. She bent forward, clutching her stomach, a guttural sob tearing from her throat. It was not the cry of victory, but of collapse, of a woman who had carried her pain too long and, in a single moment, let it consume her. Minutes or maybe hours slipped by in a blur. Nadia didn't know how long she sat there, lost between guilt and a strange, fleeting relief. Relief that the enemy she had cursed at night after night was gone. Relief that silence, not laughter, filled the house. Relief that she had finally seized control. Yet the relief twisted quickly into terror. The reality was inescapable. A body at her feet, blood across the tiles, glass scattered like damning evidence. She forced herself to move, her legs weak beneath her. She found an old cloth and began to wipe the floor, scrubbing at the dark stain that only seemed to spread wider the more she pressed. Her hands were frantic, clumsy, slipping in the mess. The smell of iron filled the air, sharp and nauseating. Every crash of thunder outside made her flinch, as though the world itself bore witness to her crime. She worked in silence, except for her own shallow breaths and the faint scrape of cloth against tile. No matter how much she cleaned, the stain would not fade. It felt burned into floor, burned into her soul. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. What will I tell Imran? Should I hide her? Should I call someone? Should I run? Each thought spiraled into panic. She pressed her bloody hands to her face, leaving streaks across her cheeks, and whispered, "God forgive me, God forgive me." But forgiveness felt impossible now. At last, exhausted, she sank onto a chair. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the erratic flashes of lightning. The body lay still, silent, an unmovable reminder of what she had done. Nadia sat trembling, staring at it, as though it might rise again to condemn her. Then she heard it, the distant sound of tires crunching on wet gravel. Her breath caught in her throat. Imran's car. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might give her away before he even stepped through the door. She stumbled to her feet, wiping at her face, trying to steady her hands. But nothing could disguise the chaos of the scene. The air itself felt heavy with blood and secrets. The front door opened. Footsteps echoed through the hallway. His voice, casual and tired, called out, "Nadia? Aliyah? I'm home." The words cut through her like a knife. She stood frozen in the kitchen, her body rigid, her eyes locked on the corpse at her feet. The storm outside thundered again, as if marking the moment. Imran was home, and nothing would ever be the same. Imran's footsteps echoed to the hallway, unhurried, unsuspecting. Then came the pause, the silence of realization when he stepped into the kitchen and saw what waited for him. His briefcase slipped from his hand, crashing to the floor. His eyes darted between the body and Nadia, whose trembling frame looked more ghost than flesh. What have you done?" His voice cracked, disbelief strangling the words. Nadia could not answer. Her lips quivered, but no sound came. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she sank to her knees again beside Aliyah's lifeless body. In the thunder-lit room, she looked less like a killer and more like a woman shattered beyond repair. Imran staggered backward, gripping the doorway for support. "Dear God, Nadia." The hours that followed blurred into chaos. Sirens, neighbors gathering in the rain, the harsh flash of police lights staining the night. Nadia did not resist when they took her hands, slipping cold steel cuffs around her wrists. She barely heard the officers reciting her rights. She felt hollow, her body moving, but her soul left behind on that kitchen floor. The investigation unfolded swiftly. Forensics confirmed the cause of death. Blood-stained shards of glass bore her fingerprints. Neighbors reported hearing shouting. Even Imran's stunned testimony painted a picture of a wife driven beyond reason. But it was Nadia's own words that sealed her fate. In the interrogation room, she sat across from the detective, her eyes red but steady. "I didn't plan it," she whispered. "I didn't wake up wanting this. But every day she was here, every day he chose her over me, it felt like I was dying. And tonight, I couldn't die anymore." Her confession was not laced with excuses. It was an unraveling, thread by thread, of decades of sacrifice and despair. The courtroom became a stage for tragedy. Nadia sat in the defendant's chair, dressed in plain white, her hair pulled back, her face pale but composed. Imran sat opposite, grief-stricken and haunted, torn between rage and guilt. Witness after witness described the cracks in their marriage, the bitter rivalry in the house, the storm that had brewed long before blood was spilled. When it was Nadia's turn to speak, the room hushed. She rose slowly, her hands trembling as she gripped the stand. "I am not here to beg for mercy," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I am here because love poisoned me, because betrayal hollowed me out until there was nothing left but rage. I gave my life to a man who gave it away to another, and when I looked at her, I didn't see a woman. I saw the grave of everything I had been. That night I broke. I broke in a way I cannot repair." Her words rippled through the court, not as justification, but as a confession of the cost of betrayal. The jurors' faces shifted between pity and judgment. Some looked away, unable to meet her eyes. The verdict was inevitable, guilty of manslaughter, the sentence heavy enough to cage her for years, but light compared to the eternal sentence she already carried within. As the gavel struck, Nadia closed her eyes. For the first time in months, her tears stopped. There was no relief, no redemption, only the quiet acceptance of a fate she herself had carved. Imran left the courtroom alone, shoulders hunched, his life shattered in ways he could not articulate. He had lost the woman he once loved, the woman he thought he loved now, and the illusion that he had ever been in control. The story did not end with victory, nor with justice neatly served. It ended with silence, an echo of that stormy night, because betrayal does not choose sides. It destroys the betrayer and the betrayed. It poisons love until nothing remains but ash. And in that truth, everyone lost.